What's up, everybody? Good evening. It's Tuesday, October the 29th, 2024. It's time for Macro Talk. This is Alan Wall's Photography, and tonight we're talking about making good pictures from bad insects. I don't mean badly behaved insects, I mean insects that are damaged or otherwise not the best specimens. This is something I deal with all the time, and I've been dealing with it today, actually, by happy coincidence. And I'm going to talk all about that, how you can salvage even pretty ruined insects and get something good out of them. But we'll talk about that in just a second. Couple of things to tell you about. First, let me see, Thursday, we're going to take another look at the Laowa Oregon. I have been using it periodically, not in the last couple of months, but I used it a bunch yesterday and the day before, and got some pretty good pictures with it. I want to give you my assessment of the device after using the lens set for about a year now, and that was because I think it was Michelle asked me to do that when I asked for recommendations last week. So if you have any recommendations, get them to me, because I'll be happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Today, actually, I was not today that I was invited, but today I did the work. But you don't want to hear about that, do you? I'm going to be giving a talk, actually a series of talks in Florida at the Florida, Camera Club Convention. Camera Club something convention. It's all the camera clubs in Florida get together every year and do a big yearly meeting. It's a big deal. I'm very excited and very humbled to be invited to speak, and I'm going to be giving 3 talks down there in the spring. And today I was getting all of the material together and getting the talks together, and they're good. There's a talk on macro photography without macro lenses or without expensive gear, just how to get a lot of fun out of it without having to do any investment. Then I'm going to do a whole talk on focus stacking, the whole 9 yards, all the things you can mess up and how not to, and equipment and everything else. And then the last talk is, the first one was kind of for beginners, the second one is for people with some experience, but the third one is for experts, I guess. It's microscope objectives, everything you ever wanted to know about them, the right ones for photography and how to use them, and the problems that you can have and how to avoid them. So very exciting. I think a lot of good live streams were contained in that talk too, in all 3 of the talks. So there's some ideas there. But if you have something you want me to talk about, something you have questions about, then by all means, let me know. I was told that somebody had asked a question in the last live stream on Thursday, and it was a new person to the group by the name of Anita. And for the life of me, I've gone back through the chat and I can't find the question. So if anybody out there happens to remember what Anita asked on Thursday, let me know so I can answer the question for her. I hate to have a new person come by and ask a question and me not answer it. Though I think it might have been something to do with extension tubes and macro lenses, which is a combination I'm not crazy about. But I'll find out and answer it properly on Thursday. All right, Saturday, after stack, 10 o'clock in the morning. And this one's going to be a bit different, because instead of being me and Bud Parrott, it's going to be me and me doing it. Bud's not going to be around this weekend, unfortunately, and so I'll do it, and we'll have fun. We'll talk about how I do stuff in Photoshop, which will undo all the good work that has been done by Bud over the last 3 months. That'll be fun. I'll enjoy that. And let me see. There was one other thing. Oh, I remember. Competition. Intimate insects is the subject this month, and that's basically insect parts, interesting parts of insects. And the competition ends on Thursday at midnight. So if you haven't taken a picture of an interesting insect part, like a weevil foot or a tiger beetle's mandibles, then now's the time to do it. It really is, because you'll run out of time. And you need the practice, because coming up in November and December, the biggest competition we've ever had. It's a 2-month competition. Every photographer, whether you've won the competition before or not, is allowed to submit 3 entries. It's a wild card. As long as it is a macro or close-up photograph, 1 to 2 or closer, I think will be adequate. As long as it meets that criteria and you have no more than 3 of them, then you're entered. And I imagine we're going to have a lot of good pictures, so this is going to be a good one. We have huge prizes. We have Lester Lefkowitz's books signed. We have a complete suite of color calibration tools donated by an anonymous supporter. That's a $250 set of equipment for calibrating your computer and what have you. Fantastic. And there'll be other stuff. I think there's going to be a lens in there too. So yeah, now's the time to dig out your best shots from the last year. Let me see. Was that everything? I think it's everything. Was it? I think it was. If you have a suggestion, put it in the chat. And if you have a suggestion that you want me to see and read, put it in a super chat. I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. All right. Let's talk. Today, I am working on a project with somebody, and one of the things I needed to do and am planning on doing is photographing a frog leg beetle in exquisite detail so that it can be blown up very, very large. And for this occasion, I bought some frog leg beetles, and they're gorgeous, absolutely stunning, and they are in fantastic shape. I'm going to give you the name of the vendor that I got all these insects from. I got a large order of insects, and I got them domestically, and I got them through Etsy. And I did put a note with my order saying, dear person, these insects are going to be used in a fairly public way, and I will talk about your shop regardless. I mean, whether the insects are good or bad, I'll probably end up talking about your shop. But just so as you know, I wanted to give you a fair heads up. And with that proviso, I received a box of insects, and there is not one issue with any of them. They're not all weevils, but many of them are. I've gone over them all under the microscope. Some stunning, stunning tiger beetles. Look at these little things. Absolutely gorgeous. And they're all in spectacular shape. Weevils. They've been lovingly wrapped, and look at them. Absolutely gorgeous. The last time I placed an order from my shop in Eastern Europe, look at this one. It's the face of a man. It's called the mask beetle. Isn't that weird? It's a bit shiny and needs a polarizer on it. Here's another beauty. Now, this is one I'm a bit reluctant to touch in case it comes back to life. It's bigger than my head. Look at that thing. These insects were perfect, and I wanted to thank... I can't remember her name. Oh yes, here it is. Here it is. Oh dear. There's a thank you note that doesn't say who it's from. That's a shame. She needs to fix that. I know it's a she because, yeah, the name of the company is a person's name. I'll think of it before the end, before the end of the program, and I'll let you know, because really, they're fantastic, and that's very unusual. However, because I was very eager to get started on this project, and these frog leg beetles are so gorgeous, and I was really ready to jump into it. My rig is set up and it's really functioning beautifully and everything's in great shape. So I started preparing the first beetle, and I did something I haven't done in years, literally years, and I destroyed the poor thing. I knocked off an antenna, cutting the cellophane off, and then a claw was hooked into the cotton, and I yanked a foot off. And then in trying to release the back legs into normal walking position, I disarticulated one. I haven't done that much damage to an insect. Well, come to think of it, 2 Fridays ago, driving back from La Crosse, Wisconsin, I did a lot more damage to a lot of insects with my car, but that's different. This was just desperate. And every fiber in my body wanted me to throw the thing away so I never saw it again, and order some more. But that is not what I want to talk about tonight. We can all do that, and that is not, I think, the best way to go. When you have a damaged insect, whether it arrives damaged, and I'm sorry, this is going to be a pure insect talk, so for those of you who are not into bugs, bear with me. We'll get back to other stuff later in the week, but this is a bug thing, and you'll be seeing a lot of pictures of bugs. And by the way, if you have a pair of stereo opticons, or whatever these are called, for looking at stereo pairs, please grab them, because you're going to need them in just a minute. So, getting back to the subject, if you order an order of insects from anybody, really anywhere in the world, there's a really good chance that some small percentage of them are going to arrive damaged. Some of them are going to arrive very damaged, and those that don't arrive damaged, you may damage. There are still others that may be in reasonably good shape, but your initial photograph is terrible for whatever reason, and I'll show you some examples of that. The question is, that insect, not putting too fine a point on it, because I'm not funny about this or anything, but the insect was killed so that we could take photographs of it. And even though in most cases the same insect would probably have died a day later of old age, it doesn't change the fact that I have a philosophy that when an insect has been used for this purpose, it's going to be used. It's not going to be thrown in the trash. So this talk is about the ways that we can salvage good pictures, really good pictures sometimes, from the mess that we make or the mess that we inherit from our vendor. And it's a really good approach, I think, because it makes you a better macro photographer. When you're faced with a much more limited palette to work with, an insect with only half its legs, or some important structure missing, you have to really look at it under the microscope to figure out what you can do. Now, I'm going to talk about things that we can do to actually salvage the insect, and then things that we can do through our photography to minimize the impact of the damage, or in some cases even hide the damage. And then I'll talk about things we can do in post-production to make the obvious less obvious. So bear with me, because I think there are going to be some things in here that are going to surprise you, some approaches that you may not have thought of before. So my goal is, at the end of this evening, you will be better equipped to deal with an order of insects that contains some duds. Or it doesn't have to be ordered insects, it can be insects you catch. I use a net to catch most of my insects, and it's not infrequent that the tiny things that I like to photograph get damaged in the process. So this is something I use a lot for my own captured insects as well. The first thing you need to do is not push that specimen all the way back to the end of the line every time you see it. If you had a plan in mind for a workflow, if you'd ordered some insects and your intention was to photograph all of the beetles first, or all of the stalk-eyed flies, or whatever it is you want to do first, if your damaged insect is in that group, then go ahead and deal with it when you normally would if it wasn't damaged. This will get you in the habit of working this into your mindset when you're doing a day of insect photography. Initially, you need to assess the situation. You need to decide what you're going to do, and the best way to do that is to take all of the insect parts, assuming it's fragmented, but maybe it isn't fragmented, maybe it's just squashed or has a bent wing. Put it under the microscope and look at it. Look at it carefully from all angles and assess it like you would any other insect. Does it need to be cleaned? Does it need to be relaxed? Just because a leg is broken off doesn't mean it doesn't also need to be relaxed before you compose it. In fact, it usually means it definitely needs to be relaxed before you compose it, because that is probably why the leg was chopped off. Decide early on whether you're going to repair the insect or embrace the damage. And this is a concept that I'll show you examples of, but sometimes there is a message in the damage, in photographing what you find on the insect, that is more valuable than simply photographing the insect with a leg glued back on. So decide whether you want to do that, because it's going to change the direction that you go in with that insect. Of course, if you're going to repair it, then you need to go down the repair route, which includes cleaning and relaxing and drying and posing, or pre-posing, not proposing, pre-posing, before you do the repair, and then going on to the actual posing before you pin it and photograph it. You don't have to go through any of that necessarily if you're going to capture the essence of the injury and whatever story that might tell. You're probably thinking that, well, there's no time that a damaged insect will make a good photograph. I would argue that there are plenty of times when that's the case. If you have an open mind and you're looking at the thing with a view to making the best out of a bad deal. Pretty much regardless of whether you're going to repair the thing or shoot it as it is, it still needs to be cleaned. Seldom will you get insects from any vendor that are clean. Never will you get them spotlessly clean the way you of course want to shoot them. This is getting pretty darn close to spotless. I'll tell you, these are in fantastic shape. So the usual routine: soft brushes, soapy water, maybe a little warm soapy water, and puffs of air to dry it and blow the debris off. And the usual thing: dry it exquisitely carefully with bits of filter paper. Can I show you something else real quick? Apparently not. Hang on. Did any of you do gas chromatography in school? It's a special chemistry technique designed to put students to sleep, but they use a special kind of filter paper. I think that's what these are for, but they're perfect, absolutely perfect. I used to buy the big round ones and cut them up. These are the best filter paper strips I've ever found, and they are extremely good. They're very rapid absorption. what's that, grade 1, something like that. Packet of 100 of them for just a couple of bucks. Can't remember where I got them from, but I'll put it in the chat. They're excellent. Anyway, you'd need something like that to dry your bugs. And then you have to, if you're going to replace or repair or try to restore the insect to its former glory, then you need to come up with a plan for that. Now, we've already done this in a live stream just a few months ago, where I showed you how to reattach an amputated appendage in the most realistic way possible. It involves examining the other appendages, looking at pictures to see how the leg is supposed to be positioned, so that when you glue it in place, it's in the position that you're going to want for the pose. Super glue does work when it's wet, but it doesn't work predictably, and sometimes it dries the instant it gets wet. So make sure that your bug, especially the area of repair, is completely dry and completely clean, and use far less glue than you think you need. That's a rule of thumb, but in some cases, if you're trying to glue a wing back on, if you go overboard with the glue, it really will ruin the wing to where you'll have to come up with a different plan. But wings, antennae, appendages, even antennae have a symmetry to them. If you look at an insect's antennae, they'll come out and they'll bend about the same direction, the same amount, usually in a good prepared specimen. Don't glue it on upside down. It looks wonky. And oftentimes when you get it on the stage and start taking pictures, you'll notice that it's browner on the top and it's more grey on the bottom. You couldn't see that with your naked eye. So do it under the microscope. That's what you got the microscope for. And all you really have to do is, with a pair of very fine and very gentle tweezers, I put a tiny bit of rubber tubing. It's very thin and very small on the ends of my tweezers, so that I can grasp the leg or the antenna pretty firmly, dip just the last segment in the glue, and then hold it on the other end of the antenna, bracing myself until it sets, and then just release it. And if you do that and you practice, you'll get quite good at it, and they will be hard to see. Legs are probably the easiest to put back on and the hardest to put back on well, because if they are even slightly wonky, the insect doesn't look normal, especially if you've got it in a realistic pose, if it's walking or something. So there's another trick that I have used from time to time. I'll have a gorgeous insect that arrives and it's missing an antenna, but the antenna is Gonzville. It's not in there at all. As a general rule, I order more than one insect. When I order an insect, I'll usually order a group of them, maybe just two, but I'll usually have an extra one. And it is not uncommon for me to borrow an antenna or a leg from another insect to put on the gorgeous insect. It has to be the same species, you understand, but I'll use the leg on one specimen, and then sometimes I'll take the leg back off and put it on the other specimen, where it came from in the first place. So you can do that if you're careful and you plan what you're doing. I have also, when I've had a beautiful weevil that I really wanted to shoot, and a leg was missing and it wasn't in the bag, I'll go to one of my old specimens. It may be years old and I may have photographed it till it's falling apart, but it's got legs still, and I can borrow one of them. Even on some very rare occasions, I'll borrow a limb if it's not the right one. I mean, if it's the first appendage instead of the third, well, that's usually not going to fly. Well, that's the wings. You get what I'm saying. That I'll replace a third with a second, or a second with a first. But what was that just showed up on my screen? It looked like a thumbs up. Did I cause that to happen? I must have some kind of gesturing turned on. I'll figure that out and turn it off later. But anyway, you won't get away with putting a first appendage into the socket of a third appendage very often, but that will be kind of obvious. So you need very fine instruments and preferably padded tips. Another thing that I'll do on some of my tweezers, I don't think I have any that have it on there right at this minute. No, these don't, but I'll dip the tips of the tweezers in that liquid rubber and let it set, and it'll just form a very thin rubber coating on the tips, and it'll help me grab a hold of antennae. Alright, so you'll need that. You'll need fine brushes, very, very fine. I like the synthetic ones more than the hair ones. Just they're a little bit softer, I think, but very soft, very fine tips. I use micro brushes, and you need all that stuff right there on your work surface with good light, and you need a disposable plastic thingamajig to put your super glue in if you're using super glue. If you're using Bondic, you need to have a UV light source. There is nothing worse than having everything perfectly positioned, the Bondic on and your beetle's leg in the socket. Where's the light? Where's the UV light? It's in another room. That isn't going to help. So think of all of that up front. Plan for the repair, and use way less Bondic, way less glue, way less glue dots or whatever it is you're using. Way less than you think you need. That will, in every case in macro, that will help you, because it makes it harder to see. It holds just as well, if not better, and it sets much quicker. All right, be very, very careful if you're replacing or implanting a leg or a wing, that you get it anatomically correct and symmetrical if symmetry is what you're after. Oftentimes, I like to photograph things that appear to be active, moving. I like to photograph weevils walking, oftentimes towards the camera. To do that, they need to be positioned in a very particular way. So if one of the legs that's missing is one of the walking legs, be sure to put it back on exactly the way it's going to be in the final show, because you can't change it. Once it's glued on, unless you're going to break it off again, it's there for good. So nothing there that surprises you. I mean, this is what we do. We've been doing this for years. This is how we fix a bug, and that's pretty much always my first choice. If I can fix it, I will fix it, because it makes the photography a lot easier. There's really nothing to say about preparing the parts that you don't already know. I'm trying to think if there are any examples. Very, very rarely there may be some extraneous tissue that gets pulled off with an appendage or with a wing that you want to trim away, but it's unusual. Usually you're not pulling innards out with when you lose something. These things are very dry, so it's unlikely that you'll need to do anything. So what if you can't get the appendage or the elytrum or whatever it is you're trying to fix? You can't get it back on believably, or it was never there and you don't have a replacement. I have, on rare occasion, made a replacement with something fake. A piece of wire or a pipe cleaner on one rather sad occasion. You can do this if you're going to then photograph the insect with that part out of focus. I would strongly advise not photographing a full focus stack that includes the pipe cleaner sticking out of the back leg socket. That's not very believable, and yeah, people will probably have comments about that. But I have done that. I've done it with toothpicks. I've done it with, I've made wings out of cellophane. As long as there's something there that's flashing and glinting and softly blurred, it often will do the trick. But let's assume that you couldn't do that. You couldn't put a fake whatever into the picture, and instead you're going to have to minimize the impact of it or cover it up, or possibly find a way not to even image it. And that can be done. The more soft your light and the more diffuse your light, the less harsh shadows and sharp edges, the easier it is to make the injury or the missing tissue less obvious. The soft light helps to make the blurring of the out of focus parts really blend into more of a uniform haze behind the focused parts, and that's helpful. Directional lighting is very helpful in this, and the careful use of reflectors, flags, small LED lights if you're doing continuous light like I seem to be doing continuously now. You can emphasize all of the parts of the insect that are not the broken parts of the insect, and let the broken parts just kind of not make a big deal about them, and they'll tend to disappear into the background. Using a muted background that's not pure black, not pure white, not real angular, something that's muted, a little darker, and has some kind of pattern on it. That's a great way to confuse the eye of the viewer. It's not a great background for most macro stuff because it confuses the eye of the viewer. But if you're trying to hide the fact that the right rear appendage is just a stump, that's a good way to do it, because our brains are really good at filling in the blanks, and we recognize patterns, and we fill in missing parts of a picture without knowing we're doing it. So if you can use a background that promotes that, it often will be all you need. I would advise using very low contrast backgrounds if you're trying to hide damage. The more contrasty they are, it's like the harsh lighting, the more apparent anomalies are. So low contrast and colors that complement the specimen will also help to blend everything in. Of course, the most important thing for me is how you position the insect relative to your camera, the angle you shoot at, and that's everything right there. It is not uncommon, and I'm going to show you all the pictures at the end, because otherwise it will be kind of choppy. I think it'll make more sense after we've talked, but I will photograph the insect so that it looks completely normal, like a completely normal walking pose, but you just can't see the second appendage on the right. And it's not because it's not there. Well, it is not there, but that you wouldn't have seen it anyway. That's the best way to hide them. Every now and again, if you have a more complex setup that maybe has some context or some props, you can hide damage behind props. You can also, I have done several pictures where I've used two insects of the same species in some type of proximity to one another for a creative reason. You may remember I did a shot of a couple of AWPhotography bees flying in close formation, which they don't do, of course. This was a playful arrangement of the two bees, one in front of the other. The reason I did that was the one that was behind was missing two legs, and you couldn't see it the way I positioned the bees. That's really the premium method for making up for an injury, is to take a picture that is so interesting by itself that you're not counting legs, or nobody would notice even if that side was shown. Some special shooting tips that will help is, of course, to use your focus stacking technique. And one of the techniques we talk about quite a lot, and something that's incredibly valuable for creative reasons as well as for dealing with problems, is using selective focus. Instead of doing a complete focus stack where every single bit of the bug is in sharp focus, you only focus through the thorax and let the rest of the insect just drift off into softness. Now, the goal here is not to hide necessarily the back part of the insect or whatever part's out of focus. You can actually show the part that would normally show that limb that's missing. The appendage is not there. But if your focus has stopped before that, and you can make out the other two appendages perfectly clearly, and there is one missing, when the other two are soft and out of focus, it de-emphasizes the fact that it's missing the appendage. It becomes as unimportant as the two out of focus appendages, because your brain tells you that, well, if the photographer wanted me to see what was going on there, it would have been in focus. It's not, so I'm going to concentrate on what is. And that's what people's brains will do when they look at your pictures. So selective focus. And that's not just with focus stacking. That can be just doing a single shot. If you have the luxury of being able to pull back your camera and use a longer lens and get more depth of field, enough depth of field on your subject to get everything that you want in focus, and then everything else will be out of focus, it's a bit more natural looking than when you cut off focus in a focus stack. We've never talked about this, and this isn't the time, but it's a technique we do when we have a bug and we just want the front part, the head, to be in sharp focus. We're in sharp focus for an abnormally deep shot. I mean, it doesn't look realistic at that magnification because, again, our brains know that that's only a tiny sliver of that would be in focus for real. And then it quickly becomes out of focus beyond. That is not nearly as convincing as a single shot where the focus just drifts out of focus. If you can do that to hide your damage, and that's what I'll do when I have a crushed bug. If it's really badly been squashed and it has a torn elytra and wings hanging out and all that, I'll just take a single shot of what I can get in focus with the camera pulled way back and let everything else just be in progressively softer and out of focus. This will make more sense when I show the pictures. Framing and composition are another incredibly valuable tool. I'll show you examples of that too. I have this lovely tiger beetle that I have had sitting in a jar for a year because I couldn't figure out what to do with it because it was all damaged at the back. And today I figured out what needed to be done, and that's what I did, and I'll show you the pictures. But it involves creatively cropping, for one thing, and using less typical compositional style. Maybe not positioning your insect at the center of the frame, but positioning it coming onto the frame or tucked away in a corner. There's all kinds of creative things that you can do that will de-emphasize the injury. In focus stacking, we can really prioritize the areas of interest. So this is less about de-emphasizing the areas of injury, but more about getting really dense stacking in the interesting part, so we get exquisite sharpness and detail. That will draw attention away from the injured part. The more exquisitely perfect the interesting part is. And you can also, this goes without saying, but if you have a heavily damaged area, a crushed leg, or some discolored area, don't focus stack it. You can't hide it when you focus stack it. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb, so avoid that. And if you've never used slabbing as a part of your workflow in macro, I would strongly recommend it, even if it's only for this reason. It's not only for this reason. Slabbing is an incredibly useful tool for speeding up your post-processing, speeding up your retouching. I mean, giving you more control with less wasted time, and I think giving you better overall pictures. And this is one of the ways it can help. You can isolate areas of the stack using slabbing and selectively de-emphasize that. It's called layered stacking, and it's really what would be another way of calling it selective slabbing. You could call it that too. All right. If none of that works, if you can't use your skill with the camera to de-emphasize the problem, and you can't use your skill at the microscope to glue the thing back together, you're going to have to use your after stack skills to hide it after the fact. Now, I have some personal opinions about this that certainly don't have to be your own, but I'll share them with you in case it informs the way you do this in the future. But if I am going to be showing a picture to anybody as an intact insect, I will not hide the fact that it is a dead insect, or if it has been repaired, I won't hide the fact that it has been repaired. So usually it means I won't publish pictures that have been either had limbs glued back on or had things. No, if I hide something with my technique with the camera, that's a fair game. But if I've glued a leg back on, that insect will either become a subject of a piece of work like this. I'll share it with people and explain how it was done. Or if it's something I'm going to put on my wall for my own pleasure, that's fine. That's fair game. I will not glue a leg back on and put the photograph into a competition. I don't enter competitions, but I wouldn't if I did. I wouldn't publish it as an intact insect if it wasn't. With the things I'm getting ready to talk about, it's much more sensitive, and I understand how people feel about it. You have to decide where you draw the line in your post-production when you are creating a final picture that is different than the thing you photographed. Now, some people will say, well, you can't focus stack, or you can't use the healing brush tool to remove dust. Well, you're grown-ups. I'll let you decide what makes sense to you. I personally have no problem with adjusting the exposure or removing some dust, cleaning things up, even exchanging the background for one that's more complementary. I'll do all of that, and I don't have any issues with it. Copying one leg to the other side, it's a bit off-putting, and I don't do it for pictures that I'm going to publish again unless I tell you that that's what I've done. But I have a picture or two in my collection, my print collection, that have some work done on them in post. And I'll show you those so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But oftentimes, if it's a beetle, for example, if I'm shooting down on the beetle and it has perfect limb symmetry, except for one leg that I didn't correctly position, and I like the symmetrical look, I may use the clone stamp tool to change the angle a little bit and have both legs together. But that's for me. That's because that's the way I like to look at the image, and that's what I would have done if I had my wits about me when I photographed it. Similar with a missing foot. I'll borrow a foot from the other side and flip it around and put it on if it makes the picture look better. But like I say, I would never submit that to a competition or submit it as an example of my work to anybody. It would be something I'd do for the fun of it. The clone stamp and healing brush tool are probably the most powerful tools because they basically replace the pixels. Now, I am an advanced clone stamp user, and I've learned all the tricks for flipping it horizontally and vertically, resizing it, rotating it. I can move the whole little piece of pixel territory around any way I want to make it look very different on the other side, and to be, of course, anatomically correct on the other side. The healing brush doesn't do any of that. The healing brush basically, you paint over the thing you don't want and it disappears, and the AI fills it with whatever it thinks should be back there. A lot of people have tried to get me to use that brush as recently as the last after stack, and I have been using it, and I do not like it. I do not like it at all. It changes a lot more than the spot healing brush, which is the one I use, which is much more limited, and I have better control over it, I feel. If you really are going overboard with the post-production, you can use something called frequency separation, which will allow you to isolate the colors and the textures separately, and then you can modify how those appear in the final image. That's getting a bit aggressive for a picture that you're gonna publish or post in a competition. Other post-production things that are a little bit more advanced than most people may be comfortable with, in which case you need to come to Afterstack on Saturday at 10 o'clock. But using layer masks to blend in different layers, you can blend in parts from the same image. You can even blend in parts from another image using layer masks, and then you can modify the extent to which they show using all kinds of tools, and that's beyond the scope of this. But on rare occasion, I have even painted in what was missing. If what's missing is just a hair, a hair that's important because it's normally symmetric. Say the hairs or the bristles that come out of a fly's face and cross in the middle. I had a beautiful fly that was just absolutely stunning, and I wanted the picture to put on my wall, but one of his spines had gotten broken off on one side, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I didn't want the other spine because it would look identical. It would just look mirrored because they actually cross. So what I did was I painted it with multiple colors and multiple different lines, and it's the only thing I've ever painted that looked good. It looked believable. But yeah, I was like that guy with the frizzy hair who did paintings on PBS. It was just layers at a time, very softly and very gently. It worked out quite well. Can't find the picture though to show you, so you just have to take my word for it. If you're going to move apart, be mindful of one thing. Shadows and light on the moved part are going to look like they do on the other side of the insect. So if you've got an insect and the lighting is directional, as it probably is if you have been going to watching any of my videos, that's what you'll do. if you remove the leg from one side and flip it over digitally, and then glue it back onto the other side digitally in Photoshop, the light is going to be on the wrong side of the limb. You need to fix that. You can fix it with careful dodging and burning, that type of thing. But just be mindful of the fact that you'll move its shadows with it, and that can ruin it. Here's something that we mentioned at the beginning that is a complete change of pace. Sometimes you'll want to photograph the injury or photograph the damage. I've done this with dragonfly wings, for example. I think dragonflies live just an amazing, interesting life. We're going to run out of time for the pictures, but I wanted to show how at the end of the dragonfly's life, it has used up all of its stuff. And I had this dragonfly with tattered wings. I mean, how it could fly, I don't know. They were in shreds. But that was the way the thing died, and I wanted to photograph it just like that, and I did. And the temptation to fix the wings or replace the wings was significant, but I didn't, and went with showing the wear and tear. You can do that with any insect that you find that's got natural wear and tear on it. Show it. I mean, that's the poor thing lived through that. Let's show it. And sometimes it just shows character in the insect that might not otherwise have a whole lot of character in it. Not the case with a dragonfly, but yeah. Another thing you can do is take the whole thing monochrome, make it sepia or black and white, as somebody did with a picture of mine during one of our Zoom meetings, to show a different side of the picture. And darn if it didn't completely change it and covered up the parts that I wasn't proud of. Looked fantastic in black and white. So think about that. Consistent lighting, consistent color will keep your image cohesive. That's true of any image, but when you're repairing or concealing imperfections, that's really important. Same with managing your layers in Photoshop, and if you're documenting repairs, that's important too. So they're the main points that I wanted to bring out. Now I'm going to show you some examples of those main points. I'm sorry if there are questions in the chat. I can't look up there because I will not have enough time to finish this, and I really do want to show you these pictures because I think they're important examples of what I've just been talking about. So let me get to them. I won't just show the pictures from this week that I wanted to show you. Instead, I'll show you the repairs that have been done, and in some cases I'm going to ask you to guess what you think was done or how the repair was made. We'll start out with one of my absolute favorites, specimens, that is, not necessarily this subject. This is a tiger beetle in all its glory, and the problem with this tiger beetle was it had been badly stored by me. I had accidentally left this thing out before cleaning and processing it, and when it came time to shoot it, I could not move the legs, and these things are delicate, and I didn't have time to re-relax it, and its legs were all over the place. Well, I looked at the thing from every angle, and it just suddenly struck me when I was looking at it from head on that it made the thing look like it was charging at me with the legs all a kilter like this. So that's what I did. I shot it from this angle, even with the one antenna up, one antenna down. It just looked like a pell-mell tiger beetle hell-bent on coming out of the screen and eating you because of the way the legs were. So this was one where I didn't fix anything. I just embraced what I had. This is one that it's a rosemary beetle from the UK that I was given, and this little guy was missing a leg, and I didn't do anything with it. the purpose of this picture was to say sometimes it's fine just to leave it the way it is. The front two appendages aren't visible anyway, like on a tortoise beetle, but it was missing this middle appendage. Leave it alone. You don't need to fix everything just because it's broken. I took this picture of a soldier fly, a black soldier fly maggot. And if you're looking at that and saying, what in the heck is that? That was my impression too. It didn't show any of what I could see through the microscope. So what did I do to salvage this picture? And you'll notice also it's full of artifact from the stack. It was just a horrible picture that did nothing. Grab your glasses because you're going to need them. This is what I did. I reshot the little fella in stereo. And this is well, that was hang on, I'll get him back. That was the stereo pair. And if you look at that with your glasses, I'm sorry, I don't have a cross-eyed version for you to see. I don't know where I put it, and I didn't have time to switch them. You will see everything that I wanted you to see that you couldn't see in that picture. And this was an example of it not being a damaged subject. It was just a damaged photograph. It was a rotten photograph to show everything I wanted you to see. But in stereo, you can see that this thing has a head that is cloven in two, and that's the way it ingests its feed, is through this hole in its head, and it's spectacular, but you can't see it in that initial picture. I was so enhanced, so enchanted by that technique that the next time I had a soldier fly larva that just wasn't doing it for me, which was this guy. By the way, that's not his eye, neither is that. That's what he breathes through. I don't know what that's for. It might be his ear. His eye is somewhere back here. It's just an eye spot. I thought this picture was also useless. So remembering that other success, I went ahead and shot this one in stereo too, and it just completely salvaged the picture. The maggot did not die in vain. I think that's a lovely picture that shows how wide and broad the thing is and how tiny its little head is. But it worked out well. Let's see. Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my pointer not wanting to come back to the other screen. I got an earwig, and I accidentally slammed the lid of my bottle on it and squashed it. It was absolutely useless, but its butt end was not. It was saved. So I just shot the part that wasn't broken, and it's one of my favorite intimate insect shots. It looks like two people getting ready to have a kiss, doesn't it? No? Oh, well, that must be the medication that I'm on. But I thought the picture was a big success just by excluding all the damaged parts. And here's one that I'm not sure why I didn't just throw this one away. I should have done. But, it's come in useful for me in showing people how, if you let a fly's eyes get too dry, they'll crack and drain out. And I just wanted to show this to use in a tutorial, so it wasn't wasted. Let me see. Let's look at some where I fixed something. This was a tiger beetle. It still is a tiger beetle that was missing its right front appendage. And I show this to show you an example of how not to fix a missing right appendage. I did this hastily in the studio with a limb that I had lying around, and I glued it onto the wrong part of the tiger beetle and couldn't get it off again. I should have just cropped the thing out, but I left it on and nobody's ever noticed it. That's why I'm pointing it out to you. This is a rear appendage that is not even joined to the right part of the body. Let's forget I showed you that. Here's one that you may have seen before, because I have used this one in videos. It's one of my favorite insects. It's a giraffe beetle. We've only got a few more, by the way, so if you're waiting for me to finish. This guy is missing his right middle appendage, and on an insect that is all about its long neck and long legs, you can't just show that and hope people won't notice. But instead, I did him in this pose because I was going to use him. It was a humorous picture. I had him jumping on a trampoline, and positioned like this, you really can't see that the middle appendage is missing. That looks like the rear appendage now, and yeah, it was, but you can't tell it. I've also had nobody's mentioned that this thing only had 5 legs. So positioning is one of my favorite ways to go about it. And this is how I used the picture in a slightly different pose. Same bug though. There you go. That was in one of our live stream posts. What was wrong with this one? Can you tell? I'll tell you that one of the appendages on this side had to be glued back on. You know which one? Not going to tell you. Not going to tell you. I'll make it a little bit easier though. I also took this picture of the same insect with the same repair. Now can you tell? No? You want one more picture? I'm not going to show you one. That's it. It was no, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. It was a great repair. I thought I couldn't tell until I turned it over and looked at it. Not going to show you that though. This is a really weird delta wasp that came to me from Vietnam with only one wing. How did I fix that? Well, I had 2 wasps. I borrowed a wing from the other one. The other wasp was all shriveled up and didn't look nice, but this one did, so I borrowed its wing and transplanted it. All right, I'm going to show you 2 pictures of a beetle, and this is an approach we haven't talked about yet. This is a beetle from Mexico, and I took this picture of it. And I hated this picture. I thought it was terrible. I couldn't tell what I was looking at. It was too dark. But I loved the beetle. How could I salvage this thing? Well, what I did was I turned it over because its belly looked fantastic. And that's what I photographed instead. I just didn't bother with the underside. The bottom was much, much more interesting. We're out of time, so I'm not going to show you this weevil's mouth as being the only usable part of an otherwise gorgeous weevil, or this, what is that? Oh, this is one I did today. I had a tiger beetle that was squashed at the rear end, and all I could get out of it was its beautiful eyes, which are actually post-mortem eyes that I'm embracing, and its lovely mouth parts. Yeah, the rest of it's useless, completely squashed. But you do what you got to do. How about a sweat bee that was so badly dried and bent over that I couldn't straighten him out? I just swept his only wing back and made him look like he was flying really fast. I don't know if that's what they look like flying fast, but it fooled me. And I think there is one picture that I'm just going to show you because I think it's cool, and I think just one other repair picture. Let me see if it is. It is. This is the most embarrassing one I've ever done. I didn't finish the stack because I caught it before that. This gorgeous wasp from South Africa, I believe, came in the packet with its head off. I glued its head back on, backwards, and realized it as the stack was in progress and stopped and had never photographed it. But I've kept the insect as a reminder not to be hasty when you're gluing heads back on. That was very embarrassing. As I was putting these pictures together today, I came across this. It's very dark and you have to look very carefully. But I am convinced that there is something in the middle of that picture with an eye that is looking at you. That's its head, and it's got little horny things on it like a jagged ambush bug. I think that it's got a couple of appendages and its body goes back into the shadows. I was going to ask you to tell me whether you agreed with me or not, and then see how many people just thought I was having problems with my sight. But no, I'm completely convinced that if you look closely, you'll see a sharp image of something. And does anybody know what looks like that and lives in moss? I don't. So you have to let me know if you do. But we're out of time, so that will probably never happen. That was great fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're done, and everybody's already gone home. But yeah, I hope there was something in there that you liked. Gosh, I'll do what I've been doing lately, and I'm going to print off the comments and look at them all when I get a few minutes tonight, because I haven't had a chance to look at them. I don't even know who was here, but thank you all for coming. Sorry it ran over a little bit, and I'll see you on Thursday, where we're going to be talking about the Leo Oregon. Until then, thank you all. Take care. Have a good evening, and I'll catch you on Thursday.